over in Australia, games featuring paid loot boxes will now soon receive a mandatory M rating. I dove into that because it on that headline alone seems like great. That's how it should be. Unfortunately, it's not that simple as things typically are not. So in Australia, apparently M is the equivalent of a PG-13 movie or teen-rated game. Okay? And apparently this will not make a difference because it's the same as like Marvel movies in a lot of ways. Also, they go on to state that if you have any form of actual gambling, whether it's a slot or Balatro, for example, would fall into this category. Those are 18 plus. But mature, if it has loot boxes, is mature 15 plus. So the loot boxes aren't really regulated, but if you have any form of like gambling, slots, poker, Balatro, for example, then that is 18 plus.
Wouldn't every loot game be gambling? You're pulling a slot machine handle every time you kill a guy in Diablo.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it develops the same habits.
Yeah.
But it's a little silly, yeah.
It's very strange because like it kind of reads like some politician, lawyer, whatever, was like, I'm going to get some easy points and we're going to ban loot boxes. But then he like stopped there. Like they didn't actually do research on how all of that works, which tends to be the case a lot of times when this happens with anything in the video game world, unfortunately. So it's like a win, but it's not a win.
Yeah.
And it was presented as like a huge win by this website that I was reading, GameDeveloper.com, who had the story, but diving into the actual nitty gritty of it, it's kind of silly.
I also think in Australia, actually, M is not like it's not that you're prohibited from selling an M game to somebody under 15. I think it's legally discouraged, if I'm not mistaken. But
so they don't have to have like their guardian there or whatever to buy it.
No, I think that's only for 18 plus.
Okay, yeah.
At least that's what I understood.
So essentially, someone can still buy FIFA and run up a $10,000 if they have access to a credit card, $10,000 bill, but they can't play a game that has like non-monetized casino game.
Yeah. No, I mean the way this usually goes, right, is like some politician will come up with the idea of like, okay, we need to regulate this, and it's usually because a bunch of their voters or a bunch of people have like reached out, or the news has talked about loot boxes, right? That happens frequently. Like so I work with the government in the Netherlands, right? I represent the Dutch Games Association, which is the Associate for Game Developers in the Netherlands, and I work as you could call it a lobbyist, right? Like I effectively try to represent the Dutch games industry towards the government. And the thing you learn, and I've done this around the world, the thing you learn about this is that politicians want to do the right thing, but the way they're looking at the world is very different from how we look at the world. So the right thing has many more dimensions than we do. So when they come in and they start talking about this thing, they immediately get the lobby from the game developers who are like, well, but do you know how many taxes you're going to miss on this? Like, do you know how like bad that'll be for like employment? Do you know how this will affect? Like, we will run ads against you, right? Like, and we have the audience of the young people. And then it's like, well, okay, how about we like find a way somewhere in the middle where everybody wins? Like, we'll do something that shows that we're making an effort and you still get to do your thing.
Yeah.
And then really only when things get really, really crazy or the public sentiment gets so negative, they take big steps. So this is usually good because it moves the bar up a little bit. And with the bar moving up a little bit, like the next time this conversation happens, it can go up a little bit more. Right?
Yeah.
That said, it's usually like 10 games companies that are doing that lobby, right? That are just like, hey, we want to make sure that we keep to do this. To a degree, like it's it's balancing. Like there's a balancing act here that needs to happen. On the other side, this whole loot boxes thing should have been over a long time ago. Hell, it should have never happened. Like, let's be honest. Like, this is a thing that came from mobile, and then mobile started making 60% of the revenue of the video games industry, and everybody in video games went like, "What the fuck? Why don't we do that?"
Why are we putting that in there? Yeah.
Why are mobile games, and you have to remember, not today's mobile games, why are 2011 mobile games out-earning 2011 AAA games?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that they all made that choice. I just think it sucks.
Right. Yeah, I'm hoping that this is the start of, the small rock rolling down the hill and some sort of comes in there. But you mentioned the fact that
JP.
Yeah, no, it really is, because you mentioned the fact that they're lobbying against it. When you get like the biggest companies out there in games, we're talking like Microsoft, we're talking Rockstar, we're talking, like these are some of the biggest companies, conglomerates, and media in the world.
One thing that is nice is that Europe tends to be very ahead on this kind of regulation, like data protection, like loot box stuff. Actually, I think Diablo Immortal is still illegal in the Netherlands. You can't buy it here.
That sounds right. Yeah.
They were just like, that's not okay. But the thing about that is it's going to be that weird. It's going to be that weird situation where for a while there'll be uneven guidelines, but then you're kind of seeing that it'll either split into territories. You're seeing it now with like what was it called? What's the Instagram social media thing? Their Instagram, Twitter. What's it called again? The Instagram where you can post shit.
Threads?
Is it Threads?
Threads.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a good sign for Threads.
Right. Threads.
What's it called?
Threads was not. Threads was not allowed to launch in Europe for like 2 or 3 months after it launched globally. They're like, your privacy regulation is shit, so you ain't in. And what you see is that then sort of like brings up everybody else, because we have to develop for it anyway. Like we have to make a version of the game that will work without it. So why would we make 2 versions of the game?
Right.
Yeah. Unless my hard rule nowadays is if something is not allowed to launch in Europe, but it is allowed to launch in the US, I don't fuck with it. I stay away from it, because apparently the money is so important to them that they made 2 versions of the game. I ain't into that. Like, not doing that.
And I would also say in the case of like Diablo Immortal, which you brought up, Blizzard having that banned anywhere, as long as it's not China, I don't think they give a shit. Right?
Yeah,
like that game is all China-'d the fuck up. Right? When it comes to like how you can monetize it.
It's a shame too, because
it does super well.
That game it's fun. Like, that's what sucks about it, is like the monetization is so egregious. But I like Diablo and loot games a lot.
Totally,
but,
yeah.
Like I want that, for sure. But like not scummy. Like could we just separate the two so I can play something fun on the toilet and not have to spend my savings account? That'd be cool.
Yeah.
They've
got solutions for that, but just not yet, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's one of the weird things. I love Diablo Immortal as a use case, because like the reason it's such a good loot game is because you can't get all the loot without paying for it. So if you don't get the loot, there's something to play for.
There's always a carrot. Yeah.
There's always a carrot ahead of you, and they managed to keep that, because otherwise you have to pay. So it's a really good use case of like how loot games really work. Like it's a carrot machine. It's just a carrot machine. You got the thing, cool, here's the next thing. Can you get it? No, you can't get it. You have to pay for it or play 70 hours. It's just they went really, really extreme on that shit.
Yeah.
But it made for such an interesting use case. It's just like, no, it is fun, but it's fun because I keep not having the thing I want. So I have reasons to get the thing I want. Until I start feeling like, okay, this is extended just for the money. And then I hate it instantly. Yeah. It's just it's a switch, right? It's not like a soft where you're like, this is fine. It's just at some point it's like, this next thing you have to get 200. And you're like, no.
No. You're exactly right. That is a lot of that stuff. A lot of like loot games in general is hiding the loop, right? Like the game loop is how well they can do that. And sometimes that's to the benefit of money, and sometimes that's the benefit of just the game design, right?
I'm curious what Goth is going to say here.
Yeah.
Oh, I really hate it when a loot game's like you could get everything easy. Like it makes me want to put it down when everything's just like an eventuality.
Yeah.
Or you have too much agency. But that's how I've always gamed. I like there to be crap that someone has that I can't get super easy, but I don't want it to be behind a credit card. That's why I liked like old school Phantasy Star Online. Like I grinded for like hundreds of hours to get a sword. that I never saw drop once. That was my white whale.
Yeah.
And I loved every minute. I always hoped a thing dropped. It never dropped. But yeah, I feel like if they brought that out now.
That's why I play PoE for hours upon hours upon hours, right? It's the, you can't buy power in PoE. So when something drops in that game and you get power, that fucking dopamine is crazy. It's an insane feeling, especially if it's like of great value. You become, you're like, I am all powerful. Fuck you all.
Yeah.
You just got a bunch
somebody
of zeros
else feels
and
bad because you got it. That's a good feeling. Like,
exactly. That's the loop.
It was happened to me in Destiny with the catalyst for my favorite gun. It was like you could only get it if you played like the opening You could get it by getting like chests and like the hard mode of a specific raid, and you could only do that once a week.
Yeah.
I think I was like 40 weeks in when it dropped for me, and I was like, just every weekend I would get a bunch of people together and like try like the first 2 chests, because getting a group of randoms to do something difficult in that game ain't gonna be it.
Yeah.
I played for like 40 weeks. I even went to Bungie at some point to talk to them about it. I was like, man, like, yo, this is like, I'm at like 30 something, and the person that I was talking to looked at me and was like, "But are you gonna get it?" I told them like, this is broken. Right? I've been doing it for 37 weeks. Every week, somebody in my group gets it. Sometimes 2 people in my group get it. The only person who hasn't gotten it is me, and I'm 37 weeks in. And they looked at me, and they went, "But are you gonna get it?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Then it's working." I'm like, fuck.
That's right.
What stage of grief is bargaining if you went to?
He was deep in it. He was deep in it for sure.
He's like, "Yeah, it's working." I'm like, "Oh shit! You know what? You're right. I want this thing. I will play for this thing." Also, I hate y'all. But like, it's how games like that are supposed to build.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens in Australia. Right. This is maybe the first of many, perhaps. Maybe it'll spark more conversation in other parts of the world. We will have to see what comes from that.